A few years ago, the game Splendor came out. It made a big splash, and people were really digging the game. But one thing I didn't really dig about it was that after you play it 2 or 3 times, it's the same game over and over again. Well, this game I'm going to talk about today is very similar to Splendor, but has a little bit of replayability to it. So let's talk about Gizmos.
The finest minds of our generation are gathering together at the Great Science Fair, competing to be named the greatest crazy inventor guy of the year. On your turn, you get to take a single action. First, you can file. You can take one of the gizmos from the main display and file it away to be built later. Or you can pick. Take one of the 6 energy spheres available in the dispenser and put it in your energy containment ring. Or you can build. Spend energy spheres to build one of the gizmos from the display or one you have on file. And lastly, you can research. Draw cards from the gizmo deck and choose one of them to build. Many of the gizmos that you build have functions on them that can be triggered by taking one of the previous 4 actions. And then others might trigger from those actions, and this can create a chain reaction of additional actions. Furthermore, many gizmos have upgrades or conversion properties that allow you to draw more cards, convert energy into other cards, and so on. After any player has built their 4th level 3 gizmo, the round will end and the players tally up the points on their gizmos, and the inventor with the most points is crowned the greatest and most inventive, crazy inventor of the Great Science Fair.
So I opened up by saying that this one reminds me a lot of Splendor. I mean, there's basically the same core concept here. You collect a currency as an action. You spend that currency as an action. To take a card gives you victory points. And the cards that you collect give you a little bit of an easier time getting cards in the future. So that exact same thing happens in Gizmos. But there's one major difference that I think makes Gizmos a superior game. It's the added element of the chaining of effects. This is so cool, and thematically it's fantastic. I mean, they got like the whole science fair theme. You got that awesome looking dispenser with marbles coming out the bottom, which is a difference in itself, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the concept of chaining actions together, once you build a gizmo, that gives you an additional benefit to taking certain actions, and you can start to chain those things together almost indefinitely at that point if you continue to buy more and more cards and put them on the same actions. It makes it very, very fun to put together a real thriving engine in this game. I love engine building games. I particularly like them in heavier Euro games where you're putting together an engine and it's you watch that engine run turn after turn. This is on the lighter side of that spectrum, but it still has the concept of building an engine, the chaining. So you take an action, you get to pick another marble, you get to pick a random marble, and depending on the color of that one, you get to pick another one, you can build something extra. All kinds of cool stuff with the actions and how that all chains together. Really, really dig that. And I think that's where the replayability comes in with this game. You have the options to control what you do in the game. You can control where those cards go, which cards you buy, and how they benefit your strategy. I think this one's neat because it hits kind of 2 ends of the spectrum. You can play this with a family and they can sort of frivolously build an engine and just see what happens. Build a little mousetrap and see what happens, and hopefully you do a good job. And it's still a fun game. You're playing it like Splendor, only you're getting a benefit here and there. Or you can play it on the other side of the coin, which is a more hobbyist side, where you're really focusing in on how you can build a really good, efficient machine. And each time you take those actions, you get a whole bunch of resources, or you get like some extra victory point tokens or something like that. You can focus down on certain kinds of aspects of the game, so you can play it on a heavier end or a lighter end. So I think that one really fits a niche for people who are heavier gamers like myself, who play with families who are more casual like myself. Now, one of the things that I think really helps make this game work in that respect is when you're playing a game like Splendor, you have all of the poker chips out there, all the colors. You can just take anything you want. There's nothing stopping you other than somebody hoarding them all, of course. But in this one, there's a limited supply of the various colors that come out of the dispenser. So only certain ones might be available to you in the moment. So I think that makes these engines work a lot better because you have to build conversion aspects to your little gizmos so that you can get yellows when you don't have yellows or blues when you don't have blues and convert this to that. And this blue becomes 2 because there wasn't enough of them. That actually adds a lot more to the game as well. It's a random series of colors coming out of that dispenser. That's a really neat addition to the game that adds to your engine building. Now, I mentioned Splendor again. Of course, I keep going back to Splendor because this game's very much like Splendor. Well, with this game, the replayability is obviously a little more, in my opinion, because there's an added element to the game. But I will say that despite there being more replayability, I don't think there's tons of replayability. And that's because I don't think each one of the cards and their abilities that activate are really all that exciting. I was actually kind of disappointed when I went through the cards to look what all was possible. There's a lot of conversion stuff, this color to that color. There's a lot of pick extra marbles out of the dispenser or random ones out of the top. There was get victory point tokens. There was additional draws and additional files and that kind of stuff. All of that kind of basic stuff. But there wasn't anything really all that exciting. There weren't like special ones that had special abilities that you could get that would trigger something really cool to happen. None of that at all. It's all very basic upgrades to your little engine. And I don't know if it's a balancing thing that they chose not to add extra stuff or it didn't fit the game design or it made it too complex. I'm not sure why. But when I was looking at them, I was disappointed. So I think your engines are going to feel very similar when you build them. Of course, you can sort of strategically focus certain things, but I still feel like after maybe like 5 to 10 different plays, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I did it. I built all the engines that there are to build. So though it has more replayability than Splendor, and I would very much rather play this than Splendor, I still feel like there's kind of low on the replayability side. All that said, I did find it fun. I think it was a cool game. It was pleasurable to pull the marbles out. I like the concept of marbles, and you had to put them in your little circle so they don't roll away, and that's your energy containment field. I like that whole concept. I like the concept of building the engine. I like the concept of watching the engine happen. So, short term, I think this is a very good game, and I think it'd be a lot of fun for your families, and I think it's one that you could take out as a filler game at your game nights too with your other hobby friends. So, if this sounds interesting to you, check out Gizmos. Thanks so much for joining me here for my review today of Gizmos. If you like board games, card games, miniatures games, role-playing games, why don't you check out our audio podcast? You can find it at thesecretcabal.com or on iTunes. And while you're here, why don't you do me a favor and click the subscribe link down there. Click the bell icon. That'll alert you anytime we put up any videos. And until next time, have a good one, everybody.